So, folks, it just works, which people who don't know is a meme phrase for it doesn't work. I know, it's
Callum, it's
very
one of
cryptic.
your segment titles. Obviously, they know it's a meme phrase.
Well, it's, it's one of those cryptic memes that people don't understand, such as it's the exact opposite meaning. Very deep knowledge, I know, anyway.
I'm only just hearing this for the first time right now.
Well, I'll promote something first before I tell you about what just works, which is Frank Dicotter's Mal's Great Famine, which is something that also just works.
It just works, guys. If you're looking for mass population reduction in the smallest time possible, it just works.
Want to eat some babies? Well, it just works. So there we are. Anyway, people who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, the origins of this meme is, of course, Todd Man, Big Todd, telling us about how, yeah, of course, it just works. Someone made a number out of this a while back. And I am going to play it. The audio on the screen.
Play a little bit of it.
Friggin' hilarious. Let's go check that out.
People have far too much time on their hands.
I don't know. He literally just said it twice, and it became something that years later.
It's because it was Todd Howard from Bethesda advertising Fallout 76. It was destined to be a meme.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. But anyway, because of Todd's pretty little lies about what just works, I thought
Does E3 still happen?
I stopped paying attention.
I've not heard about it in years, because it used to be the big thing. Everyone around the middle of summer would go, okay, what's happened at E3? Let's laugh at what Todd Howard said this time. But now I just don't hear about it. I hadn't heard about it since maybe COVID shut it down and they've just not brought it back.
Honestly, I think the game industry is just so crap at this point. There's no point paying attention to E3.
Yeah, true.
It's just cancer in every possible
Todd
regard.
Howard might bring up another trailer for Elder Scrolls 6, which will be released 30 years from now.
I mean, I'd love to do a stream where we just talk about Fallout and what my boy did to that beautiful genre.
Go for it.
But for another time, maybe tomorrow.
You got anything on tomorrow?
I'm not on tomorrow, actually.
You can mock something up this afternoon.
This isn't video. This what are we doing? Another time, whatever. I thought we'd just check in with the UK because it indeed just works. As you can see here, chap here wrote to the NHS and said, "Oi oi, I'm ill. Take care of us." And they wrote back, "Can confirm that your referral was processed on the 6th of January 2023, and we have placed you on the waiting list from that date. Please note that the waiting list is currently 4 years. We are currently seeing patients from 2019. Once you're next on the list, we'll be in touch and offer you an appointment. You can expect to be seen sometime in 2027.
If only we had imported more foreigners, this would have solved itself.
It just works. I mean, sorry, but yeah, I mean, the NHS is some kind of historic mistake. If we're looking at a waiting list of 4 years, I mean, I imagine it's not urgent. I imagine it's not, you're going to die in 2 weeks of cancer if we don't get you in.
Now,
but
I'm going to say this through gritted teeth. I don't think the NHS would be anywhere near as bad as it is right now if we weren't importing over 1 million people into this country every year. It still wouldn't be great. It wouldn't be ideal, but I doubt we'd be having waiting lists of 4 years. Maybe just 2.
Harry, foreigners don't get ill. Idiot.
Sorry, I forgot.
Come on.
Sorry, I forgot. I must not have got updated on the science recently.
In fact, statistically, they're all healthier than us, I'm told.
Oh, okay.
Which is why the rest of the world has a much higher life expectancy.
Is that from one of those studies where they have a sample size of like 3 people, all of whom are like Indian Brahmin?
No, my source is I just made it the F up.
Oh, okay. Came to you in a dream. Good to know.
I'm a scholar.
Yep.
Anyway.
You're more of a scholar than those bloody York people.
But talking about it, there's some other stuff that just works, which is the UK medical industry at large. As you can see here, vaginas are being rebranded as bonus holes by cervical cancer charities because of stuff we can't talk about on YouTube. I am.
This is a very porn-brained headline.
I mean, it's the kind of thinking that presumably someone who's just obsessed with anal would come out with.
Yeah.
Like you're down with the.
Maybe we are being a bit too harsh. Maybe the sex education reform in the UK really is necessary because this person, whoever did this cervical cancer charity, did not get what they needed from their education.
There's the anal Dave over there. He only does anal. That's all he's obsessed with. You're chatting to him at the bar, like, "Oh, Dave, why do you only do anal?" And he explains, and he goes, "Well, the other bit's just a bonus hole, isn't it?" I mean, sincerely, I don't know how else
is-
you could get to that
Is
conclusion.
this Dave at the pub who's also like, oh, well, Italians are just black, aren't they?
He's a very
It's
influential
all
man.
just that one guy at the pub.
Pub Dave has been running the country by accident. He's actually completely pissed.
He goes to the same pub as the Tories, and they've been listening into his private conversations.
Since the 1990s, something has gone terribly wrong in this country because Pub Dave has been. I hate this country so much.
I would be so much happier if that was the truth,
Yeah.
because then all we would need to do is find this Pub Dave and tell him, just
Whisper in his ear.
hold it, maybe keep it to yourself, mate.
Yeah, but no, there you are. So if you have a bonus hole, listen here, bonus hole and front hole are both deemed acceptable.
What about vagina?
No, it's the pussy and the wussy. So you've got to get the wussy.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Is this cervical cancer charity just run by femboys?
They've never seen a
Is
woman.
Pub Dave into femboys?
The wussy and the wussy.
Is this the twist? Pub Dave is really into his femboys recently.
Yeah. Oh god, the culture has changed quite a bit. So people are gonna have that stuck in their head now. They say so. You're welcome. You can go home, look your wife in the eye, and say, "Give me a wussy." Anyway, moving on, because some other things that just work in the UK, such as the bank closures. You may have been told about this with this segment on it, because everyone was having their bank closed for saying certain things we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube. Turns out this has now been expanded to defense companies. So companies that do the defense contracts for the Ministry of Defense are having their bank closed because could be a bit racist, couldn't they? Close them down, boys. This story is just kind of pointless. They go on to say that obviously this was a mistake, we swear.
What law are they using to close these people's banks? How are they justifying this?
So for people who don't know, the news is that, well, the argument goes that, well, you could be a politically exposed person, which is a term we've made up. No one who's British, as a side point, has ever been, who is on the politically exposed person list, has ever had anything to do with money laundering, which is the given reason.
Okay.
The arrests,
All right.
well, no, we'll start with the convictions. The convictions, rounded to the nearest zero, are zero. It's because it's zero. And the arrests for such a crime as well are also zero.
Okay, because the something that I've seen regarding this might suggested that they might be wanting to do it so that they can try and come out from under EU law and regulation, where they tracks
It is an EU directive that caused all this.
Yes, where it tracks whether, basically it tracks if you're money laundering through your accounts. And some people are like, ooh, that regulation's not going to be good for me in the long run. So let's manufacture some consent to get rid of that one.
Yeah, I mean, Nigel Farage has pointed out you could just delete this tomorrow. It is an EU directive. British government not so interested for some reason. Quick update on all that, though, on the bank closure scandal, because a friend of mine sent me a clip from GB News yesterday, and it was a lady who was not a politically exposed person, but had been put on the list because screw yourself, I guess. And she was on GB News mentioning how she couldn't open a bank account. So she asked them why. They obviously said nothing. Wouldn't tell her. So she got a lawyer.
All right.
And then started doing the legal stuff. And she managed to find out the source of the information about why she was a risky individual was from WorldCheck. Now, WorldCheck is a database, as it writes here, politically exposed persons, and the specific group responsible for her situation was the company listed there, Refinitiv. Now, Refinitiv are a company you've never heard of, don't do any good in the world.
Merger deal with the Blackstone group, though, and if I remember correctly, Blackstone used to be part of the same organization as BlackRock, and they kind of split into two organizations in the early 2000s, I believe.
Wouldn't be surprised. And the detail here being that Refinitiv, literally all they do is collect data, and then they sell the data as accurate and valid and blah, blah, blah.
We've made up this term, politically exposed persons, which just means somebody who's not part of the globalist left, I assume.
Yeah, but in her case, it was especially funny, at least for me, not her, obviously, because it was just complete bollocks. So, for example, they said she lived in Monaco.
What does that...
She'd never been to Monaco.
Not only is that a strange thing to be put on a list for in the first place, it's not even true.
No, just like, I've never been there. So, don't know anyone who's been there. So, I don't know why I live there, according to Refinitiv. And Refinitiv have just made this up, presumably, or read it on the internet from, I don't know, 4chan posts.
All right.
Sarah, she lives in Monaco, but she's no one even on 4chan does.
Is that like a euphemism or something? She went to Monaco to expose her bonus hole.
They then listed the rest of this bollocks that she said that they had on her, and then she said, yeah, also none of that is true. Can't have been true because of these reasons. So I messaged Refinitiv saying, none of that's true. This isn't me. I live here. Here's my, bank statements or utility bills, or what the hell are you talking about? And apparently in that case, they went, oh, sorry about that. We just had the wrong information. It was like,
oh, and you guys are in charge of who gets debanked as well.
That's not the end of it, though. I'm sorry. Where did you get that? Because it's obvious bollocks.
Sorry, your bank account got shut down and we took your house off you. We just had the wrong info.
Just a mistake.
We are run by the horrifying bureaucratic technocrats who just run everything off of computers. And if anything goes wrong that actually materially destroys your life, that's just a computing error, lad.
Sorry about that.
We live in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You think you live in 1984. We live in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Well, there's a list here of false claims. So these are only false claims because they were actually tried, as in the company or group that were lied about went, hang on a minute, and actually went to Refinitiv or the respective organization and went, no. So you can see here, the one that's most related to us, we know the chap, for example, Majid Nawaz from the Quillian Foundation. Now, he was listed as a terrorist because there was an investigation by Vice, so some lies by Vice.
I mean, to be fair, he was in the past, correct?
But not for like decades.
Yeah, not for about 20 years, but he was in the past.
He was actually a counter-extremist for decades, using his previous knowledge to obviously destroy extremism in the modern day. And they only ended up backing down because, he threatened to sue them. But I love how Vice over here made up something, and these guys just went, well, terrorist, I've read it on the internet. And then this
Vice would never lie to me.
This seems to be a coherent reason as to why this happens. Now, Refinitiv don't seem to be actually regulated in any meaningful way in regards to, can you get this information correct? I mean, the lady on GB News is just like, yeah, it turns out they had no fact checkers. They literally just read stuff on the internet and then listed it in their database and then sold the database to banks who don't check it either. Now, no.
I mean, that seems like a rather sketchy way to run a banking system to me, but who am I?
I mean, imagine a world in which the banks don't do any checks on
I didn't go to eat, so I guess I'm just not qualified to comment on it.
Almost like in 2008 when they said that this immigrant that's just turned up, sell him a mortgage. He can't read English, don't worry, give him the mortgage. No one does any checks in the banking industry, so I'm not surprised. It turns out, apparently, this is all literally just leftist newspaper makes something up about you. It's written on the internet, so the Carl Pilkington of the world who runs Refinitiv just writes it down in the database.
Carl Pilkington would do a much better job.
He would.
At this. Let's not besmirch his good name.
There's harm to the world. There's also the point here that Nigel Farage still can't get a bank, if you're wondering. He just released a video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's now on his 9th, of course, bank that won't give him a bank account, so there's that. Some other things that just work. So the BBC just works. Hey, guys, news in. Well, it does its job of being nonsense. The BBC calls in the police over a presenter being accused of paying a teenager for explicit images. No, I'm going to read it. Don't need to, do I? We all know
it's the BBC.
BBC was.
I just want to say this is speculation on my part, but just to remind everybody, the entire BBC will be infested with these types, and it's simply a matter of public sacrifice to throw one to the wolves every so often so they can look like they're doing something to solve the problem.
Just a normal S show, in case you're wondering. I mean, this person here make a point. BBC journalists are covering the suspension of a BBC presenter, saying they went to the BBC for comment and were told nothing by the BBC.
Yep.
There we are. That's how you know you're the best and brightest. I mean, frankly, I don't know any of the details because no one can, because they're not publicly released yet, but I can speculate without evidence. There we are. That's because it is my sincerely held opinion.
I mean, you might get a job at that word check place now.
For Refinitiv. Anyway, but my sincerely held opinion that Maya Tusi is right. And I suppose we'll play this clip of his position on what happens if you do walk into a BBC building of any kind. Can we play the clip, please?
Good evening, paedophiles.
That's all. That's all. That's all I've got for what I assume.
That makes sense to me.
We go in the office and everyone says good morning. They get that, BBC.
I presume. I know some people from university who went on to do some internships with the BBC. I'll ask them if that's just the average morning.
Seems so. Anyway, just some other news, things that just work. The housing market in the UK, absolutely beautiful. We can see here, good news, Zoomers. Finally, the fire sale has begun. House prices are down. 0.1%. From last year, that's Not since the 90s, obviously. That's...
The typical property now costs only absolute bargain right here. 285,000. Well, close enough. Let's round up. Let's not be dishonest here, folks. £286,000. Your parents would be jumping at that if they were back in the day.
So,
what was it? You could buy a house for $9,000. Throw that aside. 286,000. Bargain.
For the internationals watching, that's 363,000 US dollars.
Basically giving it away.
Fire sale, my lads. And this is
Alan,
the thing.
What do you reckon? We should go out and buy 2 or 3 each?
The reason I bring it up is because, of course, you may remember that all the landlords were bleating about how the housing market's going to crash and their mortgages are going through the roof, and therefore their properties aren't going to be worth anything, and therefore they won't be able to pay it, and that's why we need the rents up. And they had all the other people who own houses being like, "This is disaster. We're all going to die," because it turns out this
boomers ruining the world like they do
was overpriced. Maybe a bubble needs to pop. No, instead the bubble's being kept up as much as possible.
Boomers must be kept.
Yeah, I will mention sidely here. I did read an article. I didn't include it. Where the government has stepped in to now offer people who would default on their mortgage, which would be a rebound of the system, because if you offer a mortgage to someone who can't pay it...
That would be that market thing that Dan talks about.
Yeah, usually there's a market or something. No, the government stepped in to insist that the mortgage regulators must offer interest-only mortgages and etc. Yeah. They're now debating actually further propping up the mortgage market to make sure this doesn't fall any further, because holy crap, my boy.
They looked at everything that led up to 2008 and just started taking notes. Good idea.
What if we didn't have a free market? This isn't the only response. Jacob Rees-Mogg responding with the government response. We need to build more houses.
This is the terrible response. This is the wrong response. We might need more houses, but I do not want to pave over the country.
Personally, I could think of a response which would help the people who own houses, and also the Zoomers, which is...
Well, you racist, bro.
Well, please fix. Graph, too much. Too high, too many.
Avert your eyes. Avert your eyes from the graph. This graph, I've been told, holds its bag closer to itself when it walks past black people in the street.
People listening, it's an immigration graph, and immigration graph normal, and then something happened in the 1990s, and now immigration graph not normal, immigration graph pretty abnormal. In fact, as I've mentioned previously...
gone off.
For people who don't know, this graph, I used to update it with these little points every year. I did that one the year before, and then I did this one as a bit of a joke, being like, haha, it's gone even higher than we would ever personally record. And then there was the previous year, which is taken in piss. Yep. So I'm not even going to bother. So there you have it.
What was it overall? It was like 606, almost 666,000, literally almost the mark of the beast, the number of the beast.
That was net.
That was net. Well, this is net migration. It was, I think it was 1,600,000 gross.
Bagillion. And I think after we get 2 bagillion...
6 gorillion.
No. Once we get 2 bagillion immigrants, then economy fix, I presume. Because you can see here, for example, for people who don't know, I did see a lot of responses from leftists who don't seem to know, and we haven't replaced ourselves for a good old 50 years now. So... Yeah.
I've looked into it.
It's not us buying the houses.
In the period between Blair opening the borders and now, the actual native-born population has reduced by about somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million in the UK.
Yeah, it's literally, we're not living in the houses, so we can't be buying them, is all my point. I mean, it's kind of difficult to be a landlord if there are no people renting from you.
And I've seen some people suggest, we would still need to be building more houses anyway because of the natural population increase of the natives. No, we wouldn't.
No.
We literally wouldn't. There's less of us.
No one thinks that. What we need to build the houses for is the immigrants. And we need the immigrants because they're going to build the houses.
And if we don't have the immigrants, we won't have anyone to run the NHS. And if we don't have the NHS, we won't have anything to heal
the immigrants.
To heal the immigrants.
And we're going to have the immigrants because they pay the taxes. Because without those taxes, we wouldn't be able to spend the money on the immigrants for the NHS. And if we... This is almost starting to sound like all of civilization is just based on the foreign population.
Was there any problem with...
You ever played Tropico?
I've seen people play it, but do you ever hear about this thing? It's this weird little historical tidbit called the Late Roman Empire.
I mean, that one too.
Yeah, there was something that they did, I think, where they brought in foreign populations. It led to collapse, widespread chaos. Now,
but if you,
I must just be making it up.
More torturous, probably more relevant example you're giving a more torturous gamer version, which is if you play Tropico, for example, and set open door as your border policy.
Oh no!
Because you start with a population of like 50, so you'll end up with like 25 people coming a month, which obviously is mad. But then you have to start building more houses to house the immigrants. Then you have to start building more hospitals to house the immigrants. Then you have to start giving more jobs. So you set up more mining facilities and farms so the immigrants can have jobs. And then, of course, well, they need houses for those jobs. So you build more houses for the immigrants. And they start building more hospitals for the immigrants. And you
this
get
is all
caught
if
in
you
this
just have the open borders set on.
endless cycle when you play Tropico of just trying to play catch up with the immigrant population. And the natives are completely forgotten about because they're now 1% of the population.
So what you're telling me is that Eton education should just be replaced with Tropico.
Unironically, the leading
They probably do a
ideology
better job.
of people like El Gocco over here and the, British government, because El Gocco is not the only man who believes this. I mean, I made the point, just meaningly here, but skip over. Here's the government making his point for here, which is we need more immigrants for the houses for the immigrants, for the hospitals for the immigrants, for the jobs for the immigrants, which we're going to need more houses for the immigrants.
And then we'll get the tax from the immigrants so that we can pay for the other immigrants who won't be paying taxes, which is why we need the immigrants to come in so that we can make up for the taxes.
There's no flaws in this thinking, trust me. There's no downside whatsoever to this actual government opinion.
This is a Ponzi scheme. This is a literal pyramid scheme.
A pyramid scheme which may work for the New World, where you've discovered some land and let's populate it. Doesn't really work for when there's a population already living there. Well, it doesn't work for them. Who cares about them?
What if you hate them with all of your spirit and you want to see them die?
Well, then it would work.
Oh, great.
If you wanted to eradicate all the Indians, that, you know.
Then we get an idea of what the motivation for the
classic
class is.
Evil American imperialist, yeah, you would. I mean, this guy here, he argues that, well, he calls on ministers to reopen the UK's borders to tens of thousands of more young workers from the EU in order to tackle the acute post-Brexit labour shortage, such as this one here. This labour shortage. It just works.
It seems like we should have more than enough.
I would have thought, but apparently we're lacking a large number of men to mill around the train station selling souvenirs. So there we are.
I mean, they're a vital part of any economy.
Sadly, the public have been completely misled, at least if we're to believe YouGov, who have polled themselves. So I don't know if there's only 72% in here, but whatever. Their polling shows that people blame the Conservatives. That's fair enough. House builders, doesn't really make much sense. Local, that also, no. We aren't replacing ourselves. We actually could build 0 houses and we'd still find housing, but older generations are to blame. Okay. There's also people blaming younger generations, complete waste of time blaming each other. Might be this one.
I can see some logic for the older generations, if only because, I mean, who's been in charge of the country for all this time leading up to this point?
The immigration minister is kind of old.
It's not been us, has it?
No, I mean, he's not 23.
No, he isn't.
So there is that. Anyway, let's mention a place where things do just work to end this off, because we can see here, local journalist, Japan is awesome in so many ways.
I saw this.
But one of the best parts about being able, the best parts of Japan is being able to walk anywhere as a woman and feel safe. Didn't expect so many racist replies. My God. Well, you tried. Anyway, not going to have
those dudes and their Asian wives.
Not going to pass comment on that one. Just wanted to say, yet another journalist defeated on Twitter.com by giving a statement about reality and then being like, oh no, what have I done?
Oh no, if I follow the statement about reality to its logical conclusion, it might mean I'm racist.
But anyway, Japan, it just works. Apparently you can walk on the street like a woman and not be...
That goes for all you men as well. Like a woman.
And for the West, not so much. But that's because it just works, folks. If you appreciated that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Deep Thinks, this one on academia. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.